They thought I was a failure because I worked at a small firm. But what they didn't know was I actually owned the entire company. And my sister's boss? He worked for me. If you've ever been underestimated by your family, dismissed for your choices, this story is for you. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because by the end of this video, you'll see that sometimes silence is the most powerful weapon you can wield. My name is Evelyn Hayes, and I'm 32 years old, corporate lawyer. Graduated top of my class from law school, passed the bar on my first try, and had offers from 3 of the biggest law firms in the city. Everyone expected me to take one of those positions. The corner office, the 6-figure salary, the prestige. I didn't. Instead, I joined a small firm called Hayes & Associates. 10 employees, modest office space in a building that had seen better days, clients who were mostly small businesses struggling to navigate contracts and compliance. My parents were confused, my friends were disappointed. And my sister Madison? She laughed. "You're really going to work there?" she asked, scrolling through her phone while we sat at Sunday dinner. "Evie, you could have had any job you wanted. Why are you settling?" I didn't answer. I never did. Because the truth was complicated, and Madison had never been interested in complicated truths. She wanted simple stories, Instagram-worthy narratives, things she could brag about at parties. So I let her think what she wanted. I drove my 10-year-old Honda, wore clothes from Target, lived in a modest apartment, and went to work every day at my tiny firm. I didn't post on social media. I didn't attend the lavish family gatherings Madison organized. I kept my head down and did my work. And while everyone was busy judging my choices, I was building an empire. Quietly, carefully, without fanfare or announcement. 7 years. That's how long it took for everything to come full circle. 7 years of Madison climbing the corporate ladder at Sterling Dynamics, a Fortune 500 marketing firm. 7 years of her posting photos of company retreats, executive lunches, team-building exercises at expensive resorts. 7 years of family dinners where she dominated the conversation with stories about campaigns and clients and budgets. 7 years of our parents asking me, "Sweetie, are you sure you're happy at that little firm? Maybe you should think about applying to bigger companies. Madison could probably get you an interview at Sterling Dynamics." I always smiled. "I'm good, Mom, really." Madison had always been the golden child, younger by 4 years, prettier in that conventional way that photographs well, charming and outgoing where I was reserved and thoughtful. She'd graduated from a decent business school, not prestigious, but respectable, and landed her marketing job through a combination of networking and sheer charisma. Our parents adored her. Every achievement was celebrated with dinner at the best restaurant in town. Every promotion was announced to the extended family with pride. When she started dating Cameron Sterling, a senior marketing director at Sterling Dynamics, they practically threw a parade. Cameron was 35, handsome in that polished executive way, from old money. His family owned property across 3 states. His network included CEOs, politicians, venture capitalists. Dating him was Madison's level up, as she called it. And once she had him, once that engagement ring was on her finger, her attitude toward me shifted from dismissive to outright cruel. "Poor Evie," she said at Thanksgiving, swirling wine in her glass. "Still at that tiny firm, I guess some people just aren't cut out for the corporate world." Cameron laughed uncomfortably. Our parents said nothing. At Christmas, she was worse. We were opening gifts when she handed me a box wrapped in silver paper. Inside was a self-help book, How to Network Your Way to Success. "I thought it might help," she said sweetly. "Since you're still working at that little place. You know, if you want to move up in the world, you need to put yourself out there more." I thanked her for the book and set it aside. I didn't tell her that Hayes & Associates had just closed a deal with a tech startup that would go public within the year. I didn't mention the corporate clients who'd been steadily coming to us for the past 3 years, drawn by our reputation for excellence and discretion. I didn't say anything at all, because Madison had never asked. Not once in 7 years had she asked about my work, my life, my goals. She assumed she knew everything she needed to know based on the car I drove and the clothes I wore, and I let her assume. The wedding was scheduled for late spring at a luxury resort 2 hours outside the city. 200 guests. Most of them Cameron's business connections, executives, directors, entrepreneurs, the kind of people who summered in the Hamptons and casually mentioned their vacation homes. I received my invitation 6 weeks before the wedding. Cream-colored cardstock, elegant calligraphy, my name printed without a +1. I was seated at table 17, according to the seating chart Madison texted me. When I looked at the venue layout, I realized table 17 was in the back corner, near the service entrance and the restrooms. I wasn't surprised. The week before the wedding, Madison called. "Evie, hey, so, listen, about the wedding." "What about it?" "Well, Cameron's family is going to be there. A lot of important people. Business contacts, you know? And I just want to make sure everything goes smoothly." "Okay. So, maybe just keep a low profile? I mean, you can mingle, obviously, but Cameron's colleagues are going to be there, and they're all very successful, and I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable." "You mean you don't want them to know your sister works at a small law firm?" She laughed, that tinkling, fake laugh she used at networking events. "Oh, Evie, don't be dramatic. I just think it's better if you don't, go into detail about your job. You know how people are. They can be kind of judgmental about career stuff." "Right. Just, if anyone asks what you do, maybe keep it vague. Say you're in legal services or something. You understand, right?" I understood perfectly. The day of the wedding was beautiful. Cloudless sky, perfect temperature, flowers everywhere. I arrived on time, wearing a simple navy dress I'd bought specifically for the occasion. Not too flashy, not too plain. Appropriate. I found my seat at table 17. The other guests at my table were distant relatives, a couple of Madison's college friends who'd been relegated to the back with me. We made polite conversation. They asked what I did. "I'm a lawyer," I said. "Oh, that's great. What kind of law?" "Corporate, contracts, M&A, compliance." "Where do you work?" "A firm in the city, Hayes & Associates." One of them nodded politely, clearly never having heard of it. The conversation moved on to other topics. I was fine with that. The ceremony was lovely. Madison looked beautiful. Cameron looked proud. Their vows were touching, full of promises about partnership and growth and building a life together. I clapped when everyone else clapped. I smiled when everyone else smiled. During the cocktail hour, I stood near the bar, nursing a glass of wine. I watched Madison work the room, glowing in her wedding dress, introducing Cameron to relatives, laughing at jokes, collecting compliments like flowers. I stayed out of her way. But eventually, inevitably, our paths crossed near the buffet table. Madison spotted me and waved, then grabbed Cameron's arm and pulled him over. "Cameron, this is my sister Evelyn. Evie, you remember Cameron." We shook hands. "Congratulations," I said. "Thanks," Cameron replied. "Madison's told me a lot about you." "I'm sure she has." A group of Cameron's colleagues approached, drinks in hand, loud and jovial. Madison immediately brightened, turning on her full charm. "Everyone, this is my sister Evelyn. Evie, this is David, Sarah, and Marcus. They all work with Cameron at Sterling Dynamics." "Nice to meet you," I said. David, a guy in his 40s with expensive shoes and a superiority complex, smiled. "So, Evelyn, what do you do?" "I'm a lawyer." "Oh, yeah? What firm?" Before I could answer, Madison jumped in. "She works at Hayes & Associates. It's a small firm. Boutique, really." The way she said small made it sound like an apology. Sarah raised her eyebrows. "Oh, boutique. That's nice." Marcus nodded. "Everyone's got their own path, right? Not everyone's cut out for the big corporate firms. Nothing wrong with staying small and comfortable." I felt the heat of Madison's satisfaction radiating next to me. This was what she wanted. Me, diminished. Her, elevated. Cameron cleared his throat. "Yeah, well, different strokes, right? Some people prefer less pressure. Can't blame them." "Exactly," Madison said, linking her arm through Cameron's. "Evie's always been more low-key. She likes things simple." The group nodded sympathetically, the way you might nod at someone who'd chosen to stay in their hometown instead of chasing bigger dreams. Then they moved on to talking about a new marketing campaign, a client acquisition, quarterly projections. I stood there, silent, sipping my wine. Madison glanced at me once, a flash of triumph in her eyes before she and Cameron drifted away toward the VIP tables, leaving me alone with my small boutique career and my back corner seat. I didn't follow them. I didn't make a scene. I simply walked back to table 17, sat down, and waited for dinner to be served. But here's the thing about silence. It's not weakness, it's patience. And my patience was about to pay off in ways Madison couldn't possibly imagine. Dinner was served. Prime rib, roasted vegetables, some kind of fancy potato dish. The food was excellent. The conversation at my table was pleasant enough. We talked about the ceremony, the venue, the weather. I watched the head table. Madison and Cameron sat with their parents, laughing, toasting, basking in the attention. Cameron's father, a distinguished man in his 60s, stood and gave a speech about legacy and family and the importance of choosing the right partner. Everyone applauded. After dinner, the dancing started. Madison and Cameron's first dance was choreographed, complete with a spin and a dip that made everyone cheer. More toasts followed, more speeches. I stayed at my table, politely declining when someone asked if I wanted to dance. And then, about an hour into the reception, the atmosphere shifted. There was a commotion near the entrance, people turning, whispering, craning their necks to see who'd arrived. I looked up and saw a man in an immaculate charcoal suit walking through the crowd, flanked by two assistants. Richard Blackwell, CEO of Sterling Dynamics Corporation, Cameron's boss. I watched as Cameron's face went pale, then flushed with excitement. He immediately moved toward Mr. Blackwell, hand extended, smile wide. "Mr. Blackwell, sir, I had no idea you were coming. This is such an honor." Mr. Blackwell shook his hand briefly, his expression professional but distracted. "Cameron, congratulations on your wedding." "Thank you, sir. Really thank you. Would you like to meet my wife? Madison's right over—" "Actually," Mr. Blackwell interrupted, scanning the room, "I'm looking for someone. I heard our legal counsel was here?" Cameron blinked. "Legal counsel?" "Yes. Hayes and Associates. We have a standing contract with them. Ms. Hayes handles most of our major deals." He continued looking around, his assistants checking their phones. "I wanted to speak with her while I had the chance. I assume she's here as a guest?" The air went out of the room. Cameron's mouth opened, then closed. Madison, who'd been standing next to him, went rigid. "Hayes and Associates?" Cameron repeated slowly. "You mean Evelyn's firm?" Mr. Blackwell's attention snapped to him. "Evelyn's firm? You know Ms. Hayes?" She's my wife's sister." Mr. Blackwell's eyebrows rose. "Is she here?" Madison's voice came out strangled. "She works there. She's just an associate or something." Mr. Blackwell frowned. "An associate? Cameron, I think there's been some confusion. Ms. Evelyn Hayes is the founder and CEO of Hayes and Associates. They've been Sterling Dynamics' primary legal firm for the past 4 years. She personally handled our $500 million M&A deal last year." The silence was deafening. People nearby had stopped talking. They were staring now, openly curious. Cameron looked like he'd been punched. "CEO? She's the CEO?" "Yes. Now, where is she? I'd like to say hello." One of Mr. Blackwell's assistants stepped forward. "Sir, I believe she's seated at—" She checked her tablet. "Table 17. Mr. Blackwell's expression darkened. "Table 17? That's in the back." The assistant nodded. Without another word, Mr. Blackwell started walking toward the back of the venue. Cameron and Madison followed, along with a growing crowd of curious guests. I saw them coming. I set down my wine glass and stood, smoothing my dress. "Mr." Blackwell reached my table and his entire demeanor changed. The professional distance melted into genuine warmth. "Ms. Hayes," he said, extending his hand. "I apologize for the confusion. I had no idea you'd be seated so far from the main tables. That's completely unacceptable." I shook his hand. "Mr. Blackwell, it's good to see you, and don't worry about the seating. I'm perfectly comfortable." Nevertheless, he turned to one of his assistants. "Please arrange for Ms. Hayes to be moved to the VIP section immediately." "That won't be necessary," I said calmly. "I insist." He turned back to me. I wanted to thank you personally for your work on the Redmond acquisition. Your team's due diligence saved us from a disastrous contract clause. The board was extremely impressed. I'm glad we could help. Behind Mr. Blackwell, I could see Madison and Cameron frozen in place. Madison's face had gone from triumphant to ashen. Cameron looked like he was doing complicated math in his head and not liking the results. Mr. Blackwell continued, oblivious to the drama unfolding. I also wanted to discuss the possibility of expanding our contract. We're looking at some international deals that would require— We can schedule a meeting next week, I said gently. This is a wedding. Let's not talk business. He laughed. Of course. You're absolutely right. Forgive me. Occupational hazard. He gestured to the crowd around us. I didn't mean to cause a scene. I just wanted to pay my respects to the woman who's made my job considerably easier. Other executives from Sterling Dynamics had gathered now, recognizing Mr. Blackwell and curious about what was happening. They began introducing themselves, shaking my hand, making small talk about projects and contracts. And through it all, I remained calm, professional, courteous. Madison stood at the edge of the group, her hands clenched at her sides, her perfect wedding smile cracking at the edges. Cameron was next to her, his face pale, clearly doing damage control calculations. Finally, Mr. Blackwell's assistant whispered something to him, and he nodded. I should let you get back to celebrating, he said to me. But truly, Ms. Hayes, thank you for everything you've done for Sterling Dynamics. We're lucky to have you as our legal partner. The pleasure is mine, Mr. Blackwell. He left, taking his entourage with him, leaving a wake of whispers and stares. Cameron and Madison didn't move. I looked at them, really looked at them. Madison's mouth opened. Evie, we didn't know. I know you didn't, I said quietly. You never asked. The rest of the wedding was a blur of whispers and sideways glances. I stayed for another hour, made polite conversation with a few more Sterling Dynamics executives who suddenly remembered they'd heard of Hayes & Associates, then quietly left before the cake cutting. I drove home in silence, my hands steady on the wheel, my mind already moving forward. Because this wasn't just about Madison's humiliation at her own wedding. This was about 7 years of choices, 7 years of building something real while everyone around me assumed I was settling for less. Let me tell you how it actually started. 7 years ago, I left Hoffman & Wells, one of the most prestigious law firms in the city. I'd been there for 2 years, working 80-hour weeks, billing every 6 minutes of my life, chasing partnership like it was the only thing that mattered. I was good at it. Excellent, actually. My senior partner told me I was on track for early partnership if I kept up the pace. But I was miserable. The cases were high-profile but soulless. Corporate giants crushing smaller competitors, using legal complexity as a weapon. I spent my days finding loopholes for clients who didn't need them, who already had every advantage money could buy. And then I met Thomas Chen. He owned a small manufacturing company that was being sued by a larger competitor for patent infringement. The claim was bogus. I could see it immediately, but Thomas couldn't afford the kind of legal representation that would prove it. Hoffman & Wells wouldn't touch his case. Too small, too risky, not enough billable hours. I took it anyway, pro bono, on my own time. It took 4 months, but we won. Not just won. We decimated their case so thoroughly that the opposing counsel looked incompetent. Thomas kept his company, his employees kept their jobs. And I realized something. This was the kind of law I wanted to practice. So I left Hoffman & Wells, used my savings to rent a small office space, hired 2 paralegals and a junior associate, named it Hayes & Associates, even though I was the only Hayes and we barely qualified as associates. My parents thought I was having a breakdown. Madison laughed and told her friends I'd quit the corporate world to find myself. But I knew what I was doing. I started small. Local businesses, startups, entrepreneurs who needed legal help but couldn't afford the big firms. I charged fair rates, did excellent work, and built a reputation for integrity and competence. Word spread. Within a year, I had 20 clients. Within 2 years, I'd hired 5 more lawyers and expanded to a bigger office. By year 3, mid-size companies were calling. They'd heard about the patent case, the contract disputes I'd won, the regulatory nightmares I'd untangled. By year 4, Sterling Dynamics reached out. They were in the middle of a massive acquisition, buying out a competitor for $500 million, and their usual legal team had missed something. A clause buried in the target company's existing contracts that would have cost Sterling millions in unexpected liabilities. Someone recommended me. I don't know who. But I took the meeting. I found the problems. All of them. Restructured the deal, renegotiated terms, saved Sterling Dynamics approximately $80 million in the first year alone. Richard Blackwell personally called to thank me. Then he offered me a retainer contract. Hayes and Associates became Sterling Dynamics' primary legal counsel for all corporate transactions. The money was life-changing. But more than that, it was validation. Proof that you could build something meaningful without sacrificing your principles or your sanity. I bought a house, a nice one, in a quiet neighborhood. I paid off my law school loans. I invested carefully, saved aggressively, and continued living like I made a quarter of what I actually made. Because I didn't need people to know. I didn't need the Instagram posts or the luxury car or the designer clothes. I needed to know that I'd built something real. And I had. My phone started ringing at 7 a.m. the day after the wedding. Madison. 12 missed calls before I even got out of bed. Then text messages. Dozens of them. Evie, please call me. We need to talk. I'm so sorry, I didn't know. Please don't be mad. I ignored them, made coffee, went for a run, came back to 17 more messages. My parents called next. Evelyn, sweetie, why didn't you tell us? Mom's voice was hurt, confused. We had no idea you were so successful. You never asked, Mom. But you always seemed so modest. We thought... You thought I was failing. Silence. We didn't think that, honey. We just worried you weren't reaching your potential. Because I didn't work at a big firm? Because I drove an old car? Well, yes. I mean, Madison was doing so well, and you just seemed stuck. I closed my eyes. Mom, I've been the CEO of my own company for 7 years. I have 32 employees. We handle multi-million-dollar contracts. I own my house outright. I'm not stuck. I've never been stuck. More silence. Then, quietly, why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me? Or would you have thought I was competing with Madison? She didn't answer. I have to go, I said. I'll talk to you later. I hung up before she could respond. Cameron called that afternoon. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Ms. Hayes. His voice was formal now, respectful. It made me want to laugh. I wanted to apologize for yesterday. If I'd known who you were, you would have treated me differently, I finished. I know. That's not what I meant. Yes, it is. Cameron, you and Madison made it very clear how you saw me. The family member to be tolerated but not celebrated. The one who chose wrong, who settled for less. Madison didn't mean, yes, she did. And so did you. You assumed that because I wasn't flashy, I wasn't successful. That's on you, not me. I understand you're upset, but I'm not upset, Cameron. I'm clarifying boundaries. I paused, choosing my words carefully. Hayes and Associates has a contract review coming up with Sterling Dynamics in November. That's 6 months away. During that review, we'll evaluate whether the partnership still makes sense for both parties. His breath caught. You're not going to terminate the contract because of personal issues, are you? Of course not. That would be unprofessional. But I will evaluate whether Sterling Dynamics is the kind of company we want to continue working with long term. Corporate culture matters. Respect matters. Ms. Hayes, Evelyn, please. This was a misunderstanding. No, Cameron, it was a revelation. You and Madison showed me exactly who you are. I'm simply responding to that information. I kept my voice level, calm. For now, nothing changes. We'll continue fulfilling our contractual obligations. But come November, we'll see. I hung up before he could respond. The messages from Madison continued. Texts became emails. Emails became voicemails, increasingly desperate. Evie, I'm so sorry. I was stupid. I was jealous. Please just talk to me. I didn't know. How could I have known if you never told me? You're my sister. Please don't shut me out over this. But she was wrong about one thing. I wasn't shutting her out over this. I was shutting her out because of 7 years of this. 7 years of being the punchline, the cautionary tale, the one who didn't measure up. One moment doesn't erase a pattern, and Madison's pattern had been crystal clear. 2 weeks after the wedding, I finally agreed to meet her. Not because I'd forgiven her, but because I knew the silence was driving her crazy, and I needed her to understand that this wasn't going away. We met at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory. Madison looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, her usual polish dulled. She'd been crying, I could tell. "Thank you for meeting me," she said as I sat down. I didn't order anything, just folded my hands on the table and waited. "Evie, I'm so sorry. I was awful to you. For years. I didn't realize that I was successful, that you were happy." She looked down at her coffee. "I thought you were making a mistake, wasting your potential. And I guess I felt like if you were failing, then my success meant more, which is horrible. I know it's horrible." "It is. But you have to understand, Mom and Dad always compared us. Always. You were the smart one, the accomplished one. I was just the pretty one who was good at making people like me. I spent my whole life trying to prove I was more than that." "So you spent 7 years making sure I felt less than?" She flinched. "I know. I'm sorry." "Madison, do you know how many times you borrowed money from me?" She blinked. "What?" "In law school, after you graduated. How many times did you ask me for money?" I don't know. A few times?" 17. 17 times over 5 years. Student loans, rent, car payments, credit card bills. I kept track. You know how much you borrowed total?" She shook her head. $43,000. You never paid back a cent. Every time I asked about it, you'd say you were between paychecks, or you'd just had an unexpected expense, or you'd pay me back when you got your bonus, but you never did. "I didn't realize, and I never pushed, because you're my sister, because family is supposed to support each other, but that support only went one direction, didn't it?" Madison's eyes filled with tears. "I'll pay you back, all of it, with interest." "I don't want your money, Madison. I want you to understand what you did. For 7 years, you used me as your safety net while publicly treating me like your failure story. You took my money, dismissed my career, mocked my choices, and made sure everyone knew you'd surpassed me. I was wrong. You were cruel." She started crying then, real, ugly crying. "I know. God, Evie, I know. And I don't know how to fix it." I stood up. "You can't fix 7 years in one conversation, Madison. Maybe you can't fix it at all. But if you want to try, you're going to have to do more than apologize. You're going to have to actually change." "What do you want me to do?" "Figure that out yourself. That's not my job." I left her there, crying into her coffee. The consequences for Madison and Cameron started slowly, then accelerated. Cameron wasn't promoted that quarter, or the next one. His trajectory at Sterling Dynamics, once a smooth upward climb, had plateaued. Not because of anything I did. I made sure of that. Our contract with Sterling continued exactly as before, but Richard Blackwell had taken note of Cameron's behavior at the wedding, and in the corporate world, perception is everything. Someone who disrespects the company's primary legal counsel, that person has judgment problems. Madison's situation was worse. 3 months after the wedding, she was let go from Sterling Dynamics. Officially, it was a restructuring. Unofficially, everyone knew the truth. She'd become a liability. The woman who didn't know her own sister was CEO of the company's legal firm? Who'd publicly mocked her? That kind of tone deafness didn't play well in corporate environments. She found another job eventually, but it paid 30% less. Her Instagram posts became less frequent, less polished. The curated life she'd built started showing cracks. Cameron's parents, who'd been so welcoming before the wedding, became distant. They started questioning whether Madison was the right fit for their family. Not because of her job loss, but because they'd seen how she treated family, and that said something about character. The marriage didn't fall apart, but it bent. Badly. And through it all, I continued building Hayes & Associates. We landed 3 major new clients in the months following the wedding. Our reputation had grown, not because of the drama, but because we did excellent work. I hired 5 more lawyers, opened a second office in a neighboring city, and started planning for a third. My team was talented, dedicated, and passionate about the work. We handled corporate law with integrity, which sounds basic but was surprisingly rare. I dated a little. Started seeing Marcus, one of the lawyers I'd hired 2 years earlier. He was brilliant, kind, and understood the importance of building something meaningful. We took it slow, both of us career-focused, neither of us interested in grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It felt healthy, stable, right. 6 months after the wedding, I agreed to have dinner with my parents in Madison. They wanted family therapy. Reconciliation, Mom called it. I didn't need therapy, but I agreed to dinner because I knew they needed closure, and I'd decided what my boundaries would be. We met at a quiet Italian restaurant. Mom and Dad arrived first, looking nervous. Madison came alone. Cameron was working late, she said, but I suspected he was avoiding the confrontation. Thank you for coming, Mom said as we sat down. Of course, Dad cleared his throat. Evelyn, we want to apologize for not seeing you, for not asking questions, for assuming Madison's path was the better one just because it was more visible. We're proud of you, Mom added quickly. We always have been. We just didn't know how to show it. You showed it to Madison, I said quietly. Every achievement, every milestone, you threw parties, made announcements, celebrated her. I graduated law school with honors and you took me to Applebee's. Mom's face crumpled. Oh, honey. I'm not saying this to hurt you. I'm saying it so you understand the pattern. For my entire adult life, you've prioritized Madison's feelings over mine, her needs over mine, her success over mine. That's not fair, Madison said, her voice tight. You always had everything together. You didn't need the same kind of support. Everyone needs support, Madison. I just learned early that I wouldn't get it from this family, so I stopped asking. Silence fell over the table. Finally, Dad spoke. What do you need from us, Evelyn? How do we fix this? I don't know if you can, I said honestly. But if you want to try, it starts with respect. Real respect, not just surface-level pride now that you know I'm successful. Respect for my choices, my boundaries, my life. We can do that, Mom said quickly. Can you? Because that means accepting that I might not come to every family gathering, that I might not want Madison involved in my business, that I might need space and time to rebuild trust that's been broken over years, not days. That's fair, Dad said slowly. I turned to Madison. And you. If you want any kind of relationship with me going forward, you need to understand something. I don't need you. I don't need your approval or your validation. I've built a life without either of those things, so if you're in my life, it's because I choose it, not because I'm obligated. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand. Do you? Because this isn't about one mistake at your wedding. It's about years of being treated like I was less than, like my success didn't count because it didn't look like yours, like I was someone to be pitied instead of respected. I know. And I'm sorry. I can't take back what I did, but I can try to be better. Then be better. Not just to me, but to everyone. Because the way you treated me, that's how you treat anyone who doesn't serve your narrative, and that's a character flaw you need to address. The dinner didn't end with hugs or declarations of renewed family bonds. It ended with acknowledgement. Understanding that repair would take time if it happened at all. I drove home that night feeling lighter. Not because everything was fixed, but because I'd said what needed to be said. I'd set my boundaries clearly, without apology or qualification. For the first time in years, I felt like my family actually saw me. A year after Madison's wedding, Hayes and Associates celebrated its 8th anniversary. We'd grown to 45 employees, 3 offices, clients across 6 states. We'd been recognized by several legal publications as one of the fastest-growing corporate law firms in the region. I'd been named to the 40 Under 40 list of outstanding attorneys. My face was on the cover of a legal trade magazine, alongside an article about building a successful practice while maintaining ethical standards. Madison sent flowers to the office. The card read, "Proud of you. Always was. even when I was too stupid to show it. M. I kept the card. It felt like progress. Cameron sent a professional email congratulating me on the recognition and mentioning that Sterling Dynamics was pleased to continue our partnership. The contract review in November had gone well. We'd renewed for another 3 years. My parents came to the anniversary celebration at our office. They met my team, saw the space we'd built, listened to speeches from clients about how we'd helped their businesses thrive. Afterward, Mom hugged me tight. "I'm so proud of you, Evie, not because of the success, but because you did it your way, without compromise." "Thanks, Mom. I wish we'd seen it sooner. Supported you better." "You're seeing it now. That's what matters." She pulled back, looking at me with tears in her eyes. "You're so much stronger than we ever gave you credit for." I learned to be. Had to. That evening, Marcus and I had dinner at my house. He'd cooked pasta with homemade marinara, garlic bread, a salad with produce from the farmer's market. "Big day," he said, pouring wine. "Big year." "How do you feel?" I thought about it, about Madison's wedding and the look on her face when she realized who I was, about 7 years of building something real while everyone assumed I was failing, about learning to value my own approval over anyone else's. "Settled," I said finally. "Like everything finally makes sense." "Good." We clinked glasses. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. My house, my career, my life, all of it built piece by piece, quietly and deliberately, without fanfare or approval. Madison had called me a failure at her wedding. In front of executives and business partners and family, she'd reduced my life to a punchline. But here's what she didn't understand. Success isn't about who has the biggest title or the flashiest lifestyle. It's about building something meaningful, something that reflects your values, something you're proud of when you're alone at night. I'd built that. Not for my family's approval, not to prove Madison wrong, not even to prove myself right. I'd built it because it mattered to me, and at the end of the day, that was the only measure that counted. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living well, setting boundaries, and refusing to let other people's perceptions define your worth. I'd learned that lesson the hard way, but I'd learned it completely. And now, finally, everyone else had learned it too.